trade world on its head. In fact, it's the art of the deal, is what he says, or is it just chaos and capital T? This report gives you all that details.
April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered as the day American industry was reborn, the day America's destiny was reclaimed, and the day that we began to make America wealthy again. In a few moments, I will sign a historic executive order instituting reciprocal tariffs on countries throughout the world.
100 days and the trade winds have shifted into a perfect storm. With a pen and a punchline, President Donald Trump has turned the rule book inside out. From the checkout counter to Wall Street, the world is feeling the whiplash. Tariffs slapped, paused and slapped again, then threatened to be lifted, have kept global markets dancing on eggshells. The result? Billionaires bleeding millions, consumer sentiment nosediving to its lowest in years, and the IMF, well, trimming global growth projections. Corporate America is hedging its bets, guidance slashed, investment shelved, and the global supply chain jammed in reverse. On China, it's a ping-pong match of talks and denials. Trump says one thing, Beijing says another, and the world holds its breath. Deals with India, Japan and Korea, still in the talking shop, and geopolitical dreams, from buying Greenland to annexing Canada, are stirring more anxiety than applause. Trump 2.0 may care about markets, but the presidency is writing a different manual. Less about trade and more about terrain. The train is moving fast, and the question is, who's driving and where's it going? Arjun Samar Mahendran for NDTV World.
All right, before we open this up to the guests joining me to talk more about the trade policy, how New Delhi has been able to navigate and what lies ahead, I want to quickly now put forth the viewers some of those important data points to really connect the dots and tell the larger picture in terms of the graphics that will tell the story in terms of the kind of tariffs that have been put in place. As you can see, of course, from EU, China, Japan, Vietnam, South Korea, all of these were the reciprocal tariffs that President Trump imposed on 2nd of April, and he ensured that it was not the 1st of April because he really did mean it. Since then, there's been a lot of back and forth. There's been a 90-day pause for all countries except for China. We're going to put that graphic out as well to tell that there's a 90-day pause for all countries except China. Now, what happens next? The window that exists right now to be able to cut some sort of bilateral trade deals. Remember, trade deficit is the prism through which Donald Trump views relationships. Bilateral relations are viewed through the trade deficit prism. That's how important trade is. That's how important trade deals are for the Trump administration. And this 90-day window offers that opportunity to all countries, including to India, which has been making the most of it. Let's get in now. Rick Rosso joining me live to talk more about it. He's Senior Advisor and Chair of India at CSIS. And also with me is Rahul Ahluwalia, who's a former official at Niti Aayog, to talk more about, well, how New Delhi has been able to navigate the tariff curveball that has come in under the Trump administration, and also what lies ahead. Rick, let me start with you. Let me ask you, in terms of the India-US trade ties, it's one of those relationships that are set to, in fact, grow more. India has been largely insulated from the kind of impacts some of the other countries are witnessing, particularly China. How do you see this going ahead, and how do you think New Delhi has been able to navigate these headwinds around trade?
Yeah, I look at the relationship as having three primary legs: the people-to-people leg, the defense and security leg, and the commercial leg. And at different times over the last 30 years, different legs have been stronger than the others. I think going back 20, 25 years ago with the growth of IT services and such, the commercial leg was probably the strongest. In recent years, because of the significant agreements that we've been able to sign and the level of military interoperability, the security leg has actually been probably the strongest, at least in terms of government-to-government talks. But the fact that Trump came out so strong against the world on trade, and to some extent he's not wrong. We do have a relatively open market in the United States, and other economies tend to be a little bit more closed. So while the numbers and calculations for coming up with tariff rates have people scratching their heads, the overall principle that we'd like to see other countries be as open for us as we are to them, it's hard to say that he's wrong about those kind of things. My own conversations with Indian commerce officials they've always been open at the outset on having a bilateral deal and opening the market to the United States. They were just more concerned if they open it up, as they say, on an MFN basis, applicable to all nations. China, Vietnam, and others would probably be the first in to take advantage. So I think you got all the pieces, the elements there on both sides to do something pretty aspirational. And the fact that you've had such heavy engagement by senior political leaders looks like the trade agreement, which people thought would be pretty nuts to imagine getting done by fall, might happen even sooner, at least the first wave of it.
Absolutely. In fact, the first of that trade pact may actually happen soon. And Prime Minister Modi was one of the first set of global leaders to meet President Trump very early in his administration. Mr. Ahluwalia, let me now then come in and ask you about the trade pact that Rick is mentioning. How optimistic are you that not only will this come in early, it will include most of the larger trade relationship that India and the US have?
I want to be optimistic, but India does not have a great history of doing trade negotiations successfully and with speed, right? So hopefully in this
right
one
now,
situation,
both sides indicate that breakthroughs have been achieved. That's why.
Yeah. I mean, so in this situation, I have all my fingers crossed. The US relationship is an extremely important one for India. We've played it very sensibly, actually. We have not come out in public and made noises against the Trump administration. We've been open to a deal. So all of these are very positive signs. The ideas that the US is important and the US is a trade relationship that we care about is primary. And I think, therefore, it's quite good that this deal is at least likely to go through. So I am optimistic to that extent, and I'm hopeful that it will go through. It's very important for us. We should definitely...
No, indeed, it is very important for us. It is very important for us. But given the fact that this 90-day window offers an opportunity to really get those breakthroughs going, and teams have been there, Commerce Minister has been there, large trade delegations have been exchanging notes. So there's an expectation that at least phase one, if not the complete deal, may actually happen. And in fact, there's more news coming in as we speak about Donald Trump's administration completing 100 days. Keeping with trade, Donald Trump has in fact shifted gears once again. There is news coming in that he wants to ensure that American consumers are insulated when it comes to tariffs from imported cars. So he's going to do something when it comes to imported cars, given the fact that most Americans right now do drive cars that are either imported completely or most of the parts are not made in India, are not made in the US, I beg your pardon. You want to respond to that, Rahul?
Yeah, and I think this is actually one of the things that makes it very uncertain for the world. And this kind of uncertainty is actually going to be one of the things that makes it so difficult for this trade policy and trade strategy to succeed. At first, if you remember, they also exempted electronics and a few other large items of goods, even from the tariffs that they did place, right? And economists have always maintained that uncertainty is worse for investment decisions than high tariffs or high trade barriers. And when you keep making these kinds of
actually
ad hoc
slashes
decisions,
compounded tariffs on car parts and green lights, reimbursements for levies that have already paid, offering big breaks for manufacturers who build at home. And in fact, Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick has hailed it as a move that's a win-win for workers. Detroit's top auto executives are all in, calling this fuel for future investment. So essentially, really playing to the galleries, because the auto industry is extremely important as well, both for Trump politically as well as economically. And you know, the uncertainty part that you mentioned, Rahul, I want to get in Rick Rosso there as well about the uncertainty that exists right now when it comes to trade tensions around the world. Rick, how do you see that? Do you see these being addressed going forward by countries individually, or you think that's the new normal in which global trade will have to operate?
Yeah, it's hard for businesses to make decisions on investing. You know, there aren't that many industries anymore that don't rely on imports or exports, either for basic goods, intermediate goods, exporting the product when they make it. A lot of companies, most companies have some level of integration. And when you think of your suppliers, if they're overseas, or you think of your market if it's overseas, and you don't know from one day to the next what's going to be the applied tariff rate, and you're trying to think about how do you nail down contracts for suppliers of your capital equipment, things like that, it can be very difficult to do so. You know, it has a real impact when you have all this instability on companies' ability to plan and make decisions. So right now we're in that period where we just don't know what the morning's going to hold. Every day we wake up in Washington and we're looking at social media like the rest of the world is to see what new ideas is the president putting on the table, which kind of things does he announce that he's going to roll back. So it is a crazy time, certainly on tariffs. We don't know what the future is going to hold. We just kind of hope that at some point it settles down. But again, you know, the fastest way to get probably something settled is what India is choosing to do. Instead of picking a fight when the United States says something like Modi's the tariff king, India chose to use this as an opportunity to sign an agreement, get something robust done. And that means that at least the companies invested in the US India lane are more likely to have stability before others are.
And how do you see, Rick, how do you see the Make America Great Again campaign, which is about attracting global capital, at the same time where countries around the world are also increasing their protectionist tendencies? Even in India, we want to push indigenous manufacturing. How do you see the two campaigns coming together? Rick?
There's a lot of reasons why I think the Trump administration has focused on this, just like Prime Minister Modi with the Make in India program has focused on trying to bring domestic manufacturing in. You know, first, we need to create jobs, both countries. The United States for parts of the economy that have been deindustrializing, for India, which is hoping to have its first big wave of major industrialization because of our trade deficits, and more recently because of concerns, security concerns of over-reliance in any one country, including supply chain constraints that we saw during COVID. So there's multiple reasons why every country is going to want to make sure that they've locked down supplies of critical goods at a time like this. It may not extend all the way. You may not have the government holding the line for soap and shampoo, but if it's something that's considered of national security, then having assured supply chains. I think right now the Trump administration is focused on bringing it back on shore. I think India did back 11 years ago when the Make in India campaign first began. But you've actually seen the Indian government approach it with more nuance recently, where they realize integration with supply chains means you've got to import some stuff to export stuff. I do hope the United States gets to where India is today to realize it is part of a value chain. You're not going to go all the way from mining the ore to making the final product. There's got to be trade involved in that. I think India got there a little faster than we did, but I hope we get there before too long.
Okay. And Rahul, this is, you know, as we wrap things up, I want to ask you just this about the impact some of these headwinds will have in terms of providing India the impetus so that a lot of manufacturing comes to India. Take Apple as an example. Now, there's a lot of manufacturing that is coming to Apple because the tariffs in China are that much now making the product that much more expensive. How much do you think these factors will make a catalyst and act as a catalyst for India's manufacturing ambitions?
I think it opens up the opportunity for us, right? I think China had very settled supply chains and it was a very difficult sort of to dislodge them from that position. I think today the opportunity is there that we can dislodge them, but we have to go the extra mile. We have to roll out the red tape for investors, the red carpet for investors instead of the red tape, which is what we've been doing in the past, right? I think we've just been wrapping up investors in red tape, making it impossible for them to invest. I think Apple was the only one big investor that we managed to move to India from the China plus one opportunity of the first Trump administration. I think as long as we negotiate not just on the trade deal, but on a deregulation deal for India, where we cut the red tape, I think this is a massive opportunity for India to drive jobs, drive investment, drive manufacturing. We have to reach out with both hands and take it. Luckily, the government has announced a deregulation commission. I think we should all rally behind the deregulation commission as it tries to cut red tape. We should, as citizens, as people who care about the future of this country, really come behind this effort and step up the deregulation, and then we can really take massive jobs and massive investment here. Yeah.
All right, I'll leave it there. Rick Rosso and Rahul Ahluwalia, thank you so much for decoding what has really been one of the biggest policy changes that Trump 2.0 has brought about, that is the tariff part. And on that note, viewers, we're going to slip into a very short break, come back on the other side, talk more about the other big policy change that Trump 2.0 brought in, which is the massive changes with regard to immigration. We come back and talk more on that and the India impact there. Stay with us.
Postcode Lottery's May draws, you could win a share of £15.6 million. For the chance to win, sign up before midnight tomorrow.
What they don't tell you about getting older is how much fun it can be. Enjoying all the things you've worked so hard for. Spending time with the people that really matter. Not to mention, finally finding that precious time for yourself. I don't want anything taking my best years away from me, but like so many people, I've seen the heartbreak that dementia can cause. That's why I'm asking everyone to order this essential free guide from Alzheimer's Research UK. It's called Your Brain Matters. We all know what's good for our heart and our lungs, but do you know how to keep your brain healthy too? Well, this guide tells you how, in 7 steps you can start taking right now, whatever your age. Just ring the number on screen to get your free copy. Inside you'll find facts and tips that can keep your brain healthy and help reduce your risk of developing dementia. It's advice you can really trust from leading dementia scientists. Read it, keep it, and check back whenever you need to. Order your free copy now. Call Alzheimer's Research UK on 0800 035 5984 or text BRAIN2 to 78866. Think of it as another way of planning for your best years, because your brain really matters.
If you won't do it for you, do it for your grandchild, who's mad you didn't hear her joke.
Book a free hearing test at bootshearingcare.com.
Protect what matters to you with Simply Safe Home Security. Get our Which Best Buy rated starter pack from under £200. There's no safe like Simply Safe.
Visit bingoaliens.com/bingo for a cosmic range of bingo games, taking bingo to another dimension at bingoaliens.com/bingo.
Will you tell me if I'm flying to Delhi to New York, can I take a stopover in Dubai to explore, or do you think it'll be too hectic?
Looking for holiday and flight recommendations in strange places? Don't. Just come to Brightson. Brightson Travel, making travel brighter.
It feels good knowing that your future's in hand. Evlo can offer you a loan from £1,000 to £15,000. Get your conditional decision in minutes.
With Post Office Over 50s life cover, enjoy peace of mind knowing your family will receive a guaranteed payout when you're gone. UK resident 50 to 80, your guaranteed acceptance. No health checks and from just £1.15 a week. Plus free 24/7 GP access with the health and wellbeing benefit. Purchase and receive a £125 gift card for amazon.co.uk, Tesco or M&S. Call Post Office on 0800 171 2211.
Welcome back. You're watching our very special coverage ahead of 100 days of the Donald Trump's administration. And in fact, one of the key issues that the administration has really been focused on is immigration. And while we've been talking about it, he's turning up the heat even more on this issue. Contentious, political, and one that his support base wants him to act on. Donald Trump has signed 2 explosive executive orders aimed at sanctuary cities and rogue officials, even as he's already signed 10 executive orders only on immigration. 3 more in fact. One immigration order demands a full list of cities and states obstructing federal immigration law and puts their federal funding on the chopping block. That's the first one. The second immigration order is the battle cry for law enforcement, unleashing resources, shielding officers from legal blowback and holding defiant local leaders accountable. And the third one, supporters say it's law and order restored. Critics call it federal overreach. But one thing's clear, Trump's not blinking. The war on sanctuary cities has a new front, and Donald Trump just fired the first shot, viewers. And in fact, to talk more about immigration, the impact it has had on India, given the fact students, techies, senior citizens, all have been impacted on this, I'm going to now get in an important voice, an immigration attorney. One of America's top immigration attorneys, Kripa Upadhyay, joins us live to talk to us about, well, what all is at stake and what can be done. Kripa, thank you so much for speaking to me on this very special show. Let me start by asking you, what role does due process really play right now when you talk about immigration enforcement, especially in the backdrop of the fact that a lot of people say that the administration or the officials are actually not completing that legal process?
Well, so again, if you look to the student visa revocations, that was a violation of due process. Free speech is very much enshrined in the Constitution. There is no language in the Constitution which says it doesn't apply to people that may be present in the United States without lawful status, right? There is no caveat to free speech. Have they tried to carve that out currently? Yes. We now have a story developing as of yesterday about how the Trump administration has deported 3 children that are US citizens, one of whom is a 4-year-old, I believe, with 4th-stage cancer. And the excuse for Mr. Holman, who runs Immigration and Customs Enforcement, is that the mothers of these children, when they were arrested and processed for removal, asked for the children to be allowed to go with the mothers, right? But moms don't get to make that decision without access to a lawyer, without access to due process. You don't just get to, put a paper in front of somebody and get them to sign it. That is not due process. So are they violating due process? Yes, but this is my point exactly, is that there seems to be this understanding of, let's push this to the extent that we can, leave it up to the courts. Let's see if anybody fights back. Right? When they fight back, then they start unraveling everything. But the problem is now you've got people that are afraid to come to the United States, right? I'm from Washington State. And so our northern border, we share with Canada. Some of the northern counties in Washington State are seeing 30% decrease in traffic from Canadians, right? Which impacts the economic situation of the state. Students, because of this whole debacle with the student visas, are probably not going to come to the United States in the same number that they were. And students are a huge, obvious economic force for the United States, right? They pay a premium for education in the US. Why would you ruin that?
Right. And in fact, that brings me to ask you, how can international students really proactively safeguard their SEVIS status going forward? A lot of them actually saw that being revoked. And as we speak, viewers, let me tell you that US visas that have been issued to Indian students have declined by 30% in just the first month of Trump's presidency, which is why the impact on Indian students is that much significant. And Kripa, explain to us, what is it that they can do to proactively safeguard their status?
Well, see, there seems to be a misunderstanding of what the F1 student visa allows. Right now, were some of the revocations allowed under law because some of the students had violated status? Yes. But a violation of status typically has not led to revocation of SEVIS or to removal, right? So for example, if you're coming in as a foreign student, it is the responsibility of the foreign student to not engage in unauthorized employment. I understand financial economics, might be very difficult, and some students may not have an option, but to try and work under the table, as it were, to try and work for cash. But is that a violation of your student visa status? Absolutely. If you come to the United States as a student visa, on a student visa, and then let's say you go on to have some sort of a criminal conviction, whether that's speeding more than 10 miles above the speed limit, domestic violence cases, driving under the influence, all of those are considered to be violations of your student visa. Historically, under prior administrations, they may have led to a student losing SEVIS status and then being allowed to re-enroll in class, right? There's never been a situation where we're seeing now, which is just mass scale revocation and termination of SEVIS for participating in a protest, for writing an op-ed in an article, or for even being associated with somebody who may have done something or said something, right? So it's difficult even to counsel students and say, this is the sort of the bright line that you need to live by, because that line keeps moving.
And that, I think, is the most troubling part. Kripa, thank you so much for speaking to us on a story that impacts so many Indians around and so many people around the world. And in fact, shifting focus now, in just 100 days, US President Donald Trump has completely upended centuries of Washington's foreign policy. Perhaps the most evident example is America's U-turn when it comes to Russia, turning foe to friend, leaving allies completely in the dark. And this report tells you that while we talk about trade and immigration, foreign policy is the other aspect of it that ties in together to really understand how much the last 100 days have changed the world that we all live in. Take a look at this report.
US President Donald Trump has stormed back onto the global stage with a chaotic and controversial first 100 days. His leadership thus far has been defined by punishing tariffs, fierce immigration crackdowns, and bold moves that have challenged international norms.
And we're going to make America great again.
Under his America First agenda, Trump is reshaping US foreign policy in ways in which global partners are growing increasingly wary, unsure of just how far the US president is willing to go. At the center of his agenda is a full-scale trade war. Trump argues the US has been exploited for decades and is now taking action, imposing tariffs that have jolted global markets, dragged down the dollar, and sparked warnings of a possible recession. But his trade first is just one part of a broader shift. Trump has taken a sharp turn on Ukraine, which led to a heated Oval Office clash with Ukrainian President Zelensky. Trump's approach to Russia has raised concerns for Kyiv and Europe regarding loss of territory in exchange for better ties with Putin.
With that, we're completely timed out on this special edition of 100 Days of Trump 2.0. We're slipping into a break. We come back with more news on the other side. Stay with NDTV.
Get £8 off at selected restaurants on Just Eat. Use code April8 now.
Did somebody say Just Eat?
Our first year as a family flew by. And now, I want to make sure he'll be financially protected for all his birthdays to come. That's why I'm calling Smart Insurance.
Hi, how can I help?
Hi, I'd like a quick quote for family life insurance.
OK, you can choose a benefit amount up to £750,000 depending on your age.
That's great.
If you're a UK resident aged 18 to 64, you can apply with just a few health and lifestyle questions. For £250,000 of cover, the price starts at just £14.77 a month.
That's less than I thought. And could help my wife pay off the mortgage.
And with our Smart Family Guarantee, you'll have peace of mind.
That's good to know.
You'll also receive a 100% advance in the event of terminal illness and 10% cashback on your first year's premiums. That's the Smart Cashback. Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card.
Protect the life you've built the smart way. To get a free quote today, call our specialist UK team on 0808 141 5855 or visit smartinsurance.co.uk.
Nothing beats a celebration. And at Tesco Mobile, we're ringing in 30 years of Club Card with deals like the Samsung Galaxy S25 Plus, with 25 gigs of data for just £43.99 a month with Club Card prices, saving you £270. Better yet, that price is frozen for the duration of your contract. And you can even bag a £30 Tesco gift card too. It pays to be connected. Search Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Now I'm retired, I can spend more time with my grandson. I'm proud of him and want to help any way I can. Which reminds me,